So, Council, I just wanted to give a brief report on the oil spill effects on the Emeryville shoreline and the activities that have gone on for the past week to address those issues. So, very briefly, we were affected by a combination of things that came out of the oil spill. We had the heavy tar balls that came into the area to the north of Watergate and affected Point Emery in particular. That was the hardest hit. We also had those same balls of tar affect the new riprap that we put in on the shoreline on the very western edge of the marina. And we had a sheen that showed up at the entrance to the Emeryville Crescent. And as a result of seeing those damaging effects, Maurice Kaufman, our Public Works Director, and also Mike Mahoney, the Public Works staff, plugged into the interagency task force that has been monitoring and overseeing the cleanup efforts led by the Coast Guard at Treasure Island, and they've been attending meetings there. They were able to bring to that group the issues that Emeryville had, and as a result of that participation, we saw a boom installed along the crescent that helped with the sheen. And then we have also had a crew of people from the O'Brien Group, which is the private contractor that's being paid for, I think, by the shipping company, of about 40 plus people who have been working their way around our shoreline. And I don't believe they're quite finished yet. They're still working on it. I did receive a chart from the O'Brien Group today that indicated, and they have probably 12 to 15 different locations around the bay, and it's a progress report chart, and they're showing in the San Francisco area that they've completed a number of beaches, such as Christie Beach. They're showing the Emeryville areas to be somewhere between 80 to 90% complete, and they're showing on the east shoreline the areas that need the greatest attention yet, and they have the least progress as Albany and Berkeley, which received considerably more damage than we did. And why that is, I'm not entirely sure. I can only guess that it must have been a combination of wind and tides that pushed the oil to the north of us, and it ended up affecting those jurisdictions and also Richmond shoreline to a greater degree. As you know, our state assembly person, Lonnie Hancock, who is on the Natural Resources Committee, asked for a urgent state assembly oversight meeting to be conducted to look into the causes of the spill and the cleanup efforts, and with the idea of possibly coming up with potential oversight legislation. And we hosted that state assembly meeting here in our council chambers last week. And then finally, Alameda County has adopted an urgency proclamation that will cover all of the cities within the county. That will include Emeryville. And so to the extent that we have costs that we have incurred that require reimbursement for our dealing with the cleanup, we'll be able to submit for reimbursement as a result of that proclamation. So that's a short report on what we know so far.
Mayor, before we leave that, could I ask a question, Pat, or actually two? Is from everything that's been going on, is there the capacity for follow-up? I mean, there's still oil out in the bay, as I understand it, and it can still, with tide changes and so forth, could still end up washing up. I mean, when they say they're done, and then if we get subsequent deposits, is there the ability to get these folks back to do again what they've already done?
Maybe I can ask Maurice to respond to that.
I believe there is. At this point, they're just doing a gross cleanup, and it's like a first phase of the cleanup. And over time, they're going to be monitoring if more oil deposits will be left on the beaches. And I believe they're going to ask the cities to approve the final stage of how that's going to be cleaned up. There's going to be a phone conference call tomorrow where we're going to discuss these issues.
Okay. And Pat, my second question, I guess, goes to Chief. Reading what it says here on these most recent emails, Who do we notify? I mean, we see this as your folks respond, they identify what's happening. I mean, I don't have a real appreciation of what happens next in terms of our involvement on getting somebody off and running to do something about this.
We have
Underneath the corner there, if you pull that out.
I'm not going to do that right at this
Okay.
moment. We have contacts through the Coast Guard with their Emergency Operations Center, and that's how we would work on this until that Emergency Operations Center is shut down. Then we would contact the Coast Guard directly in their offices. We do that routinely.
So there's no direct ability of the city of Emeryville in something like this to contact someone that's been contracted with by the state or the feds or whomever to get on this right away. In other words, we don't have any, sounds like we don't have any input into getting folks out there. We have to rely on the Coast Guard.
We have to rely on the Coast Guard. They have the jurisdiction over the navigable stream and navigable waters. It's more than just a courtesy. We actually have to have their permission to do that. But we can certainly deal with shoreline issues. But again, it's if we don't have any capacity to go out onto the bay itself.
Okay.
We would call them. Again, it's the price of freedom is internal vigilance, and so we have to stay on that.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. When they get something going towards a cleanup, towards remediation, do they, other than seeing it on the news, does the Coast Guard communicate back to your department about what they're going to do and when they're going to do it?
Not good enough.
Okay. So is all this, if we could have input from the city as all this second guessing that's going on and talking about what to do down the future, I think that's something we ought to really stress, is that it's important for the cities to get feedback back from these folks other than just having to see things on the news.
Well, we were talking about that today in our department head meeting, and I think Steve is going to either be communicating in writing or verbally how we need to be informed in a more timely fashion next time. That there was a communication gap with the cities. It wasn't just us, and it was all the cities around the Bay Area.
Yeah, it seems like, something like this ought to have some kind of a communication process where when the Coast Guard figures out what they're going to do, that they ought to be able to notify everybody simultaneously, and instead of somebody having to pick up a phone or call each jurisdiction. There needs to be something where there's fairly instantaneous notification, I think. So, anyway, thank you. Sorry to
Thank
interrupt
you.
your report.
Do I hear a motion on are you finished?